And for me, that's not a political issue that I just decided to adopt because I was running for president and thought it might make some people happy. There's a reason that Right to Life chapters all over this country are giving me their endorsement and support, because they look at the record and they realize that not only did I help work and lead an amendment to the Arkansas Constitution, Amendment 65, that is a human life amendment at our state level, but as governor led in passage of 11 different pro-life pieces of legislation. You see, I'm not one who says I will support pro-life. I will lead pro-life, and there's the difference. I'm also a person who didn't just recently discover that marriage means a man and a woman as life partners. Other people if they choose to live differently, but I want to tell you, we're having a hard enough time in this country getting it right with the marriage we've got. We don't need to start a new version because I'm not sure we get it any better. The fact is, marriage still means that this is the way that we bring the next generation into the world, and it's how we train our replacements and help them prepare to take over when we're gone. Family matters, and it still means what it has always meant, and I believe that we need to affirm once and for all, not just at the state level, but at the federal level, that the traditional marriage is the one that we believe should be upheld as the only one recognized as the official function of our government, the official act in which we recognize true family. Ladies and gentlemen, how we define things really does matter. And it will matter. There's a real challenge that many of us face in this country, and that is that used to be the Republican Party was the champion for small business. Small business represents 50% of all the jobs in this country and 80% of all the new jobs. And yet today, if you're an entrepreneur, if you have a dream and an idea and you want to go into business and put a better paycheck on the table for your family, you find that your toughest competition doesn't necessarily come from the guy across town or across the country or even across the world. Your toughest competition comes from your own government, whose excessive taxation, regulation, and the threat of litigation makes it all but impossible for you to succeed. Government ought to facilitate free enterprise, not complicate it. Government ought to understand. Government ought to understand that its purpose is not to provide for us, but to protect us so we can provide for our own families. And most of us believe the simple notion that mothers and fathers raise better kids than governments do. Leave us alone, let us raise our kids, let us be in charge of our own families. You know, I propose something that nobody else has really recognized, how it would stimulate our economy. A lot of the other presidential candidates talking about tinkering with the tax code, and maybe tapping with a little hammer. In Arkansas, we've got a statement that I have a feeling you'll get in Oklahoma, in fact, probably have the same one. We say over there that if you can't fix something with WD-40 and duct tape, partner, it can't be fixed. And I'm going to tell you something, if you look at the 66,000 pages of the Internal Revenue Service tax code, I think you can figure out we can't fix that tax code. Not even with WD-40 and duct tape. I think it's time to do something that's needed been done for a long time, and I want to be the president that gets to nail the going out of business sign on the front door. The IRS out of business so we can put some more Americans in business. That's what I'll be working for. I want to enact the fair tax, which doesn't penalize people's productivity. It says that you ought to be able to work. You ought to be able to save. You ought to be able to invest. I talked to a man in Manchester, New Hampshire a few months ago. He's a guy working in a machine shop. And he told me his story. He said, Mike, I'm working not just one, but 2 shifts at the machine shop. I'm doing that because I'm trying to help my daughter through grad school at Cornell University, where she's trying to get her advanced degree. He said Cornell grad school is costing her $54,000 a year. Now, my reaction was like that too, except it was just a little different. I was just saying, thank you, Lord, that my daughter doesn't want to go to grad school at Cornell. And here's what he told me. He said, because my daughter is in grad school at Cornell and I'm working the 2nd shift, he said, I'm in a new income tax bracket because of the extra money I'm making in the 2nd shift. He said, you know what's happening? The government is getting most of what I'm earning in the 2nd shift in additional taxes. Oh, it gets worse. Because if he saves the money, we tax savings. And if he invests the money and gets a dividend, then we tax the dividends. If he buys and sells something and he makes a profit on the capital gain, we'll tax the capital gain. And if the poor guy works so hard he keels over debt, we'll tax his debt. Now, here's the real irony. You know how genius our tax code is? Here's the deal. If he quits both shifts at the machine shop and just sits home and watches ESPN, then his daughter qualifies for the federal assistance that we're penalizing him for working for. Now tell me anybody here that it makes sense to penalize productivity but to subsidize irresponsibility. It's no wonder we're headed into a recession. I know some of the other Republicans, several months ago, we were in a debate in Dearborn, Michigan, and the moderator said, how's the economy doing? And one by one, every one of them who was asked said, oh, it's doing great. It's just doing terrific. So they came to me. And they got to me, and I made some of them mad because I said, well, if you're up here on the stage, one of you guys, I'm sure the economy's doing quite well. You've got offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands that you're not having to pay taxes on. That must be sweet. Most of us don't understand that and have one of those. Some of you got trust funds and all sorts of ways in which you can protect and hide your assets and not be taxed on them. But, you know, I said, while I hear you talking about how great the economy is, and if you're in the corner office of the major company, yeah, that may be true. But I said, if you're the guy handling the bags, if you're the guy serving the food, if you're the ones driving the trucks across the interstate highways, delivering things from one part of the country to the other, if you're the person who's out there lifting heavy things off the factory floor, you ask those folks and they'll tell you the economy's not doing quite so swimmingly well, and here's why. Because they're paying more for their gasoline than they paid a year ago. Because we're enslaved to a Middle East oil economy that makes us pay for both sides of the war. Our tax dollars pay for the military to fight terrorism. Our oil dollars ends up paying these Middle East guys who ends up funneling the money to the madrasas who train the terrorists who come against us. And I said, so fuel costs are up, education costs are up, healthcare costs are up, but people's paychecks aren't up to meet it. And I got scorned for that. The Wall Street Journal and other publications took me to task and said, you know, Huckabee's out of touch. They called me a populist. They called me all sorts of things. I was even called by Bonnie Urbay for other issues, a knuckle-dragging Neanderthal. And that was one of the nicer things I got called. Now they say I was right. Because I was listening to people who go out there and every day know they're one paycheck away from not being able to pay the rent. They know that they are one missed paycheck away from not being able to deal with it if their 8-year-old breaks his arm on the school playground today. And there are a whole lot of Americans who are helping our campaign who've never been in politics ever before, who have never given a dime to a candidate, who've never put a yard sign up, never put a bumper strip on their car. I bet if I asked, there are a lot of you who have never ever gotten involved before. You know why you're involved? Because you want a president that understands that he would be the people's president and not the totally